Hey everyone, welcome to This Is WholeLife, the Christmas edition. Well, not yet. That's next week. Our Christmas.
It's still Christmas.
But it's kind of Christmas.
It's not the big Christmas program.
No,
That's
it's not the
up.
big Christmas program, but it's kind of the Christmas. All right, let's be honest. We're here in Orlando, Florida, and if you've never listened before, welcome. This is the podcast where we talk about a deeper dive into all those things that are happening and we're talking about here at the Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida. And I'll admit, this year seems, even though it's been cooler, chillier, might I say, it's and Gabby, got me an ugly sweater this year. So, I
set to go.
Well,
you're ready for judging doors.
Oh, that's right. Is that this
tomorrow?
Week? Oh, tomorrow. Oh, mercy.
We go over to Advent Health University. We have a ongoing thing for the last 3 years, I think, where we go over there and each department at Advent Health University decorates their door for Christmas. And so clearly they need fair and impartial judges
that cannot
who
be
could not
with,
be swayed with candy left at the door or anything like that.
Or a coffee or anything
like that.
No.
Yeah. So
neck massage.
So there's a couple of us that go over there and judge those doors, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
And we always try to wear a costume or an ugly sweater. So I tend to go outlandish, and everybody else tends to be more reasonable.
Well, thank
that
you.
Sounds like a challenge to me.
I'm looking for that pair of slippers tomorrow.
We'll see what you can do.
Yeah, thank you, Gabby, for the ugly sweater. Feels like it's going to come in pretty handy pretty quick. I just got to find a battery for the lights. I feel like the lights need to be lit.
I think I'm going to go as Buddy the Elf this year.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Buddy the Elf, you can pull that off.
Yeah.
We're going to be Buddy the Bearded Elf.
The Bearded Elf.
Because we're not shaving to make that come off.
No,
that's not worth
true.
it.
Can't do it. I can't. I'm not one of those guys that can grow a beard back in a day or two.
No? Takes a little bit?
Takes a little bit.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
It'd be weird. No beard can.
I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I know it's happened before, but not in my tenure.
Yeah. So I've had it since I've gotten here. That's true.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to start off this week because also, if you're a new listener, we do cover things like food and NFL and some other random topics that you just never know. So last week, Randy was pretty happy, and we did talk a little about NFL and the Miami Dolphins, which also brings the Florida aspect. And someone who wanted to remain anonymous started out with, on an email, "Love the podcast," and in all caps, "shocked that you call yourselves football fans and think the Dolphins have never won in the cold weather. It's been a while, but they definitely have cold weather victories." So long story short.
So no, hang on. Do they prove it? Do they name one?
There is a link to Newsweek.
Oh, okay. Did you look it up?
Yes. And so
it's legit?
Yeah. The club
I thought that, okay, well, I'm going to blame the Thursday night football people then, because they said that the Dolphins had never won in
No, it was Tua had never won, not the club.
Oh, is that so? I wasn't paying enough attention.
So I think, and I think we covered it, but just in case, they've played 74 outdoor games when the temperature was below 40, going back to 1966, and they've won 25 of those. So, I mean, 25 and 74 is not great. So, it's not like, hey, we're going to be playing in ice cold weather. This isn't even 50-50.
All right, I will stick to religion instead of football.
I know.
My fault.
So, anyway.
Who'd that come from?
They wanted to remain anonymous.
Oh, come on! Have the courage to put your name with it. I have to put my name with all my information.
So, and their last win was, it's been a while. The temperatures were below 32. Was back in December 24th of 2000 when they beat the New England Patriots in overtime at Foxborough. So how about that?
Okay. Well documented. We can't argue with this.
Well played. And we just,
I will learn to pay more attention and not be on my phone and listening to the
game
football
game
at the same time.
That feels impossible today.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard.
Too many ads.
Especially if you're tweeting with a bunch of other crazy fans. What else are you supposed to be doing?
Or on your fantasy football
there's that too. Yeah.
Page screaming at why the Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill is not getting you points.
That's right.
Although he did this week.
It's too cold, but
of course
you
I
already
benched
dropped
him
him.
this
Yeah,
week.
no, of course.
I was like the Jets. He won't do that well. He went
feeling,
off.
I'm feeling really left out right now.
Well,
because
if
I can't get any Seahawks games. So
I sent you a link. I mean,
What?
somebody sent you a link. I think I heard about it. That can't confirm
It's
or
not
deny
working
that
anymore.
at all.
I
No.
tried that.
Yeah.
It's not working anymore.
No, it's back.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so if you need help with your fantasy team, it's Ken at wholelife.church. If you'd like to know
What you'll do is you'll email me, say, who do I start? Then do the opposite of whatever I tell you. That's how you'll know.
if you're having separation anxiety from your team, it's Melanie at Whole Life Church. And Lucas,
If you're trying to learn football, are you a football fan or no?
I am.
So-
I'm just not following as much, but I am.
So okay,
Yeah?
so if you have to pick between American football and
Oh,
come on.
soccer,
That's a bad position to be in right now.
okay,
I'll say soccer, just because I grew up watching.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I'm
Absolutely.
shocked.
Do they have professional football in Brazil?
They have a lot of flag football leagues going on right now.
No, was there an NFL game in Brazil this year?
Yeah, it was the Philadelphia.
It was
against,
Packers
yeah,
and Philadelphia.
yeah.
That was a season
Okay.
opener.
Yeah,
All right.
They're trying to get a lot more. I mean, I don't know why they just didn't keep NFL Europe and just let it be. I don't know why they had to kill it and then steal our games.
Probably because it wasn't making money.
If you need stock advice, call Ken at wholelife.church. He had it figured out. Knew that
And
already.
then do the opposite of whatever he said.
Oh, man. So this week, getting back to the regular podcast, we are in a 5 week, right?
4.
2, 4. Yeah, 4. Called message series called Origins, which goes through the first Advent. And
From an origins perspective.
from the origins perspective. And, no matter what we call it and how we look at it, I mean, the Christmas story, even though I tend to be a bit grinchy around the holidays, I like Christmas, sort
Nothing
of.
wrong with that.
But I love when we go through the story again. No matter how many times you've listened to it, you've read it, you've watched it, you've ingested it in any way possible. There's always something that you didn't find before, or if you did, it was like being on your phone while you're watching football. Like, oh, did I miss that part? I don't know. This I never heard this before. And this week, I think the message delivered on all of those. And so the first thing was, Ken, was there anything that didn't make the message? Because I'm just genuinely curious personally. Is there anything that didn't make the message because of time, or like, it's close, but I don't know if it really pertains, but some interesting nugget of something that as you were going through this, you were like, I wish I'd had time to share that.
The funny thing about this message was there was actually some last minute additions.
What?
To this one.
Okay.
Yeah. I thanks to Melanie, the story, the Kyla story was not in this sermon.
Yeah.
Was not in the sermon prior to Sabbath morning, actually.
Melanie knew that story?
She did not. I emailed her the pictures, or I actually texted them to her Sabbath morning, and when we rehearsed the sermon on Friday, it was minus that, and it was probably a little bit more academic, a little bit more
Factual. Just the
Factual.
facts.
and some might say boring.
I did not say that.
I was like,
It may have been heavily implied.
I'm looking over my microphone at Melanie like, all right, well, hey. Whew.
She said, I just feel it's missing something. There's something that needs to be
It's missing
added. So
dry mangoes and
because
peanut
I
butter.
trust Melanie, I went home and thought about it, and as I was thinking about it, that's when I kind of been pondering the Joseph and Mary losing Jesus and parenting fails, and then I remembered probably one of my more I don't know if it was my ultimate parenting fail, but it was right in the top 5 for sure. And so anyway, I was thinking about that, and Sabbath. So I kind of had thought about adding it, or I thought I was going to add it. And so whenever I tell these stories, I've found that it's really to my benefit to check with the people that happened happened with, what the details of the story
Good
are.
idea.
Make sure everyone
Just to make sure. And so I had completely forgotten that Kyla had been praying for manna.
That's awesome.
I just thought my memory was I'd forgotten to feed her, and along came the wonderful Peggy, who gave her food to eat and fed her. That was my memory. Well, Kyla filled in a lot of the details. It is a very vivid memory for her.
Yeah. It seemed quite crisp.
It was. So I talked to her, and she shared that, and it was that point where she actually gave me the quote that I think I'm going to have to frame it somewhere, that there has to be room for bad parenting if there are going to be miracles.
That was amazing.
So that's a little, maybe it's not what got left on the chopping floor as much as it's
what got added,
and kind of a little peek behind the curtain of what was going on. But yeah, we sat down on Friday, walked through the sermon, and like I said, it was a little bit more academic, and this is who Mary and Joseph are, all these different details. And I think we probably got most of those details in, just maybe added a little bit more heart to it and a little less academic.
Gotcha. So as long as we're right here, Ken, you kind of had to put your story out for everybody. So Melanie, do you have a similar story from parenting?
I have been sitting here thinking,
like, which one do I tell?
Yeah, exactly.
Which one will not make me see?
Oh,
no,
man.
I'll tell you a really, really bad one. We're probably going to lose listeners after this.
Wow.
Oh boy, here we go.
Oh,
buckle up.
Everybody, now I feel like the number's going up, actually.
I know, me too. I feel it. I feel the traction being gained.
It'll be this huge spike and then
down. Yeah.
So when one of my sons was about 18 months old, we got him a little potty. And I was trying to get him to use the potty. I did all the things and all the tricks. And he would not use it. But what he would do is take his diaper off and find another place in the house that was more convenient for him to go. And that had happened more than once. And I was at my wit's end. And so he walked into the kitchen one day with his little diaper off and a smudge on his leg, and I just lost it. I was so mad. I told him that was naughty, and he better show mommy where he went. Where did you go potty? And he started crying, and he grabbed me by my finger and took me down the hallway and into the bathroom and pointed into his little potty. He'd gone in there for the first time, and I had yelled.
Oh no!
I switched gears so fast. I'm like, oh, this is good. Let me give you a popsicle. What do you want? And
the key to the kingdom is yours.
The kingdom is yours. But he did get me back though, and he decided not to go in the potty for at least another year. So,
man. The winner.
He doesn't remember the story, thankfully, but I'm pretty sure it's.
I was wondering why
he's carrying it around in his soul somewhere.
I was wondering why you didn't name which child it was at the beginning, since it was a parenting fail. But now I see why. It makes a little more sense to me.
Yeah.
So. That's a good one.
That's a good one. Well. Of course, let's see. Ellie was, I think, a year and a half, maybe just under 2. She wasn't, if I remember right, she wasn't talking well yet. I'll probably get this wrong, but Heather won't correct me because she's not listening.
There's a problem with when I preach. My wife is listening, and she lets me
correct
know.
You
didn't get that one right.
You didn't get that right. No, it was, we had just bought our house, and we'd been there for a little bit. In one of the bedrooms we had been using we turned it back into Ellie's bedroom. It was where our office had been, and Heather and I were working full time in our interior design business. And I don't remember what we were doing, but all of a sudden, Ellie was gone. It was quiet, it was quiet, and she was home with us. And if we had appointments, one or the other, or sometimes we'd have to take her with. And all of a sudden, she was gone. And I was like, man, it's really quiet. And Heather's, we start looking. And if you've been to our house, we live on a dead end street. And it's about 0.2 of a mile out to Sand Lake. And we're looking and we're looking and we're looking. We have our phones and we head outside because she is not in the house. I mean, we've been under beds and closets, and we're freaking out a little bit. And because we have some neighbors that have pools, but most everyone has a screen, so we're like, I think we'll be okay. And we're walking, and it's getting more and longer, and it's been like at least, because we don't know how long she's been gone. It's only when we've realized. And I don't remember, we have a slide lock on the top of the door. And I don't remember if she got on something to open it or if we forgot. I think we forgot to lock it is the way the story goes. So she was able to just turn the handle and get out because she was tiny, tiny, tiny. And so Heather calls 911 and is like, we've lost our daughter. We don't know where she is. And all of a sudden, as we're walking out the street, like looking in yards and looking around, and I'm thinking, man, how long could she have been gone? Because her little legs how far could she get? The mail lady was out on Sand Lake, 0.2 of a mile away, and was saw this little girl standing by the mailbox on the sidewalk, just crying. And of course, when you cry that hard when you're only firstly potty trained, well, accidents happen. So we're a complete mess. Sorry, Ellie, for telling you the story. I probably should have checked with you first. Hey, you were 2. It's fine, kid. She's probably not listening either. Anyway, they bring back this hot, stinking mess. And they bring her, so we grab her, of course, everything, all is well that ends well. And we're in the house, and all of a sudden the doorbell is like ding, 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 ding. Like someone is just ringing the doorbell. I'm like, well, who? And it was Seminole County Sheriff. And as I grabbed the door, he just opened the door and pushed past me. Didn't ask, didn't say anything. Wow. He's like, where is the child? I'm like, wow. I'm like, down the hall. And I'm like, and I was about to say, you just can't. And he's like, until we can confirm that she's okay, we're still on high alert and, blah, blah, blah. And they got cars coming. And I was like, okay. And then he went in and it was like, everything was okay. But when you really stop and think about the times you were up, it's like, someone could have just picked up my kid along the road 0.2 of a mile away and been like, hey, guys, bye.
Yeah, those are the ones that make you get that feeling when you're just about to tip over in a chair, and it makes you that.
It's dread. It's dread. So I can as soon as you said the story in the context.
I just don't want to leave Lucas out though. So Lucas, tell us what you think your parenting fail will be. What do you think?
Wow, man, that's a tough one. I probably lost my child.
Yeah. I think everybody's lost their child at least once, so that's a safe one to go with.
Yeah, I'll go with that one. Just because my parents never lost me, but they lost my brother.
What?
Yes, he was 3 years old, and we were in this beach in Brazil, and then he had this little ice cream pot in his hand, and then after walking around, my parents realized, oh, where is your brother? And then we started looking everywhere and nothing of him.
Weren't you your brother's keeper?
I was 6 years old, so
no, okay.
We don't want to hear excuses.
Yeah.
Is this your older or younger brother?
I'm older. He
okay,
was younger,
so this is your fault.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's what I was thinking.
And then 2 hours later, a lady came with him in her arms, and then she was like, he was 3 blocks away. Oh. I just came back because I saw the ice cream, and she came back to the store, and we were still looking in the area. But my mom was so sad. She cried a lot. And I have memories of that. So.
Yeah, that'll stick with you.
Yeah. No, as soon as Ken prefaced the story and you lost God. And I was like, oh, it immediately took me back to that memory where you just, you feel the dread. You feel like here's somebody that, your child, and they're gone and you don't have no idea if they're okay, if until you can see them. I mean, so you kind of get the police officer hey, until I have eyes, this is not solved. Just because you're happy doesn't mean I'm happy. And the other part of it, though, is when you spend a time talking about kids that aren't biologically ours, but that God gifts us with.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but there's been a couple in my life that it feels like it almost hurts as much when something goes wrong in those cases as if they were actually your kids. When you think about that and you think, oh, well, I'm just trying to help somebody out, or this situation presents itself and you get involved through whatever that might be. And you don't think about them necessarily being your kids, but then you look and you find out that your kids are jealous of the way you're treating them because you really are treating them like your kids. And that when things that are out of your control happen to those kids, it's a real thing. It doesn't feel any different. And I guess coming out of that, I was just thinking about all the people that don't know what kind of an impact they might have made on one of those kids' lives. That during the Christmas story, I thought it was just I'm glad you brought it in, because I thought it was a really cool way to just recognize that seasons are important. And if you get lucky enough that God puts one of these in your path to do whatever, whether that's just have a safe place once in a while that they know they can come to your house, or that you're giving them advice, or whatever that might be, that, there's been so many people that God uses that way. And then you kind of wonder later on if it really made a difference. And then when you find someone that comes back and says, wow, do you remember, like you haven't seen them forever, do you remember that day, you ended up taking me, like, what you don't know is this was happening because that's why my parents were dropping me off, and you're like, wow, that didn't seem like anything, right? It just seemed like, oh, I'm just helping out a friend. And so, here's to everyone that just takes that little tapping of the Holy Spirit and just says yes, and then goes about their business like they normally would, as like, hey, it's part of the family, join in, come along. And you just never know what's going on, because sometimes that's some of the toughest parenting work that there is for the others that you might be helping. And maybe even sometimes for you, it's a tough thing to jump in. I just thought that was a really cool way to think about that.
Well,
that whole process.
Yeah, if you think about the people that have spoken into your own life, I remember one year, I think I was in maybe 7th grade, my teacher's wife wrote notes to all the kids that were in my class. And when I read the one that she gave, it was very, very specific. This is what I see in you. This is,
Oh, wow.
And I still have it. I've had it for a really, really long time, because that note, it was, I felt seen. And so that was impactful enough that I've held on to it for all these years.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that we sometimes really underrate, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about that in this sermon, was that it's not just people who have children of their own, whether that's
right.
Biological or stepchildren or adopted children. It's Lucas. I mean, who, you don't have kids yet, maybe, but there are kids in this church that you can impact their life. Kids in your neighborhood, that you can have a positive impact. I mentioned one couple that had a massive impact on my life in high school. The Dixons, they were the coolest retired couple, and they were actually ate at the little vegetarian restaurant that I was working at, and being that mostly Adventists went to the restaurant, there were not a whole lot of tips. I'm just saying. I'm just stating facts.
You're not wrong.
They'd always leave a tip. So obviously that catches your attention. But then they would also start asking about how my week was going, what's happening in your life, how's school going, blah blah blah. And then I think it's really worth paying attention. They did a really appropriate thing, rather than just speaking into my life and just immediately going, hey, we're going to Mrs. Dixon called my mom up and said, hey, this is who we are. We have been eating at this restaurant. We've gotten to know Kenny, and we really like him. And we were just wondering, we remember when our kids were teenagers, and we just wish there were some people speaking into their life. Is that something you'd be okay with? If it's not, we won't push any further. But if you're okay with it, we'd love to invite him over to our house, as you feel like is appropriate. And, if he's having issues at home and he just needs a place to get away, and you'd rather him not go to the mall, but you'd like him to know it's somewhere safe, then we'd like to do that. And so they were very appropriate in the way they went. They didn't just invite me over. They called they introduced themselves. They actually came over for a meal and met my family, and my parents were thrilled. Mr. Dixon had worked for the CIA. He was a code breaker. And so why this becomes important was I have never been good at algebra or geometry or anything math related. And so he helped me with my homework. He really helped me get through some homework that I struggled with, and super helpful to me. Mrs. Dixon was just fantastic with relationship advice, and the two of them they just loved on me. They cared about me, and there was always a safe place to be with good people. And so these are two people that really had a massive influence and impact on my life. Mr. Dixon passed away while I was still in high school, and then Mrs. Dixon had to move. So came a point where we've kind of lost track of where they're at, what's going on. But to this day, I just think the world of them. The world of them. And then I'll tell you another person. I can't remember her name, but it impacted me in a significant way because I'd gone through a really difficult period of time as a young adult, and I came back to my home church for a Sabbath, and this elderly lady came up to me, and she said, "Hey, I want you to know that I pray for you every day." Mm. I just think so much. And it wasn't like I think you're in trouble kind of thing. It was I care about you.
Yeah.
And I just want you to know, whatever you're going through, you have somebody praying for you every day. Mm. This is not somebody I know very well. It was just, but it hit me. It was like, oh, you kind of expect your parents are probably praying for you, your grandparents, maybe some uncles and aunts, maybe. But to have this person that you don't know that well, but just knows your name and comes up and says, "Hey, I am praying you. I pray for you every day." It was super meaningful to me, and to the point that I actually remember it so many years later. What I really hoped that people heard in the sermon was, look, we all make mistakes when it comes to kids. We do. We've all made our mistakes, but we can also do some really positive things, whether it's our own biological stepchildren, adopted children, foster children, or the kids that are in the neighborhood. I mean, just learning who their names are and just praying for them by name. That's meaningful. It's something that that makes a difference, I believe, in people's lives. And so there's all kinds. There's this whole range of things that you can be doing, but we all have a part that we can play in kids' lives and making a difference in their origin story. And really, this is where our origin stories really begin as human beings, is that those early years. It really has an impact on us throughout the rest of our lives. And I think, Melanie, I don't know if you remember the stat, but there's a stat out there that I want to say if 3 to 5 people at church know a kid's name by name and just greet them at church every week by their name. So, hey, Ellie, how are you doing? Hey, Kyla, how are you doing? Just that it astronomically increases their odds of staying connected to God.
Yeah.
And to the local church as well.
I think just in terms of success too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Something just in terms of being
exactly. Yeah.
Man, that's easy. Well, maybe not easy. I mean, I'm terrible with names too, but even if you don't know their names, it's like, hey, good to see you this morning. Yeah. But the name probably helps too, because that confirms a little bit like you are trying, or that maybe your memory's not as bad as you might think, or as old as you might look to them. Because I am horrible with names. They're there for a moment, and then it's just gone, and you're like, hey, you. How you doing?
Well, the truth is, though, if all of us just took 1 or 2 kids in the church and learned their name,
that's true.
You can remember 1 or 2.
Yeah, for sure.
And just greeted them when you saw them.
Yeah, let them know you. Let them know you see them.
And again, reminding you to be appropriate with how you do it. Get to know parents. Make sure that if you're do things the right way. What
Ken is trying to say is don't be weird.
Don't be weird.
Don't be weird.
Yeah. Everyone's weird is a little bit different. So, all right, Melanie.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's exactly what I was trying to.
You're welcome.
To say.
All right, Melanie, we're going to put you back on the spot here because I need your input. Because Mary and Zachariah's responses to an angel delivering these big news stories to them, is like Mary is so completely unrelatable to me personally, and I think for all guys maybe. And I know we pick on you a lot to speak
I'm
as.
so glad I could be here today.
Yeah. And I know we do this. We pick on you as the voice of women everywhere.
You speak for the entire
That's it.
gender.
That's right.
But because you are in fact a woman and you are a mother, and once upon a time, a couple of years ago, that 12 to 16-year-old girl that Mary was, how in the world do you get visited by an angel? And in all context in their time, like what this means, you're not married, and you know what's coming with Joseph. Because I have a feeling that a few of those conversations were probably pretty heated, maybe to begin with, maybe not so kind as maybe we'd like to. We'd have to come back and say we're sorry. But she says, I am the Lord's servant. May everything you have said about me come true. And that's like maturity, complete submission, all the impending issues that are going to result from what's about to happen. But like, how is that the result? Like, as a woman, do you have any insight on how she came into that at all? Because is it just the power of the Holy Spirit that was upon her, that is giving her the news and just like, yeah, we can do this? Because
this might be a little bit outside of the realm of my womanly insight on this one.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll take.
But
either
it was this incredible maturity, or maybe it was just being incredibly naive and not really fully understanding what it was that was actually going to. And I think that we embark upon that anytime that we're called to do something. We have a general idea maybe of what we're supposed to do, but we may not understand all the, like I was going to say ins and outs, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that in the sense that, when I went as a student missionary, you'd hear from student missionaries, oh, it was such a hard thing. It was this experience. And you kind of know. But then when you experience it, it's different. There's nuances to it. There's differences. And however hard you thought it was going to be, sometimes it's a different kind of hard. And so, yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that Mary probably had the general gist of what was being asked, but the pain that you experience that she went through with Jesus from beginning to start, I don't think she could have begun to imagine what it would mean and what it would be like, and yet she was willing to sign up. And sometimes those painful journeys in life, you look back and you think, I would never want to do it again, but I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I went through it. I don't want to do that again.
But I don't want to do that again.
And I suspect Mary probably had a lot of those moments in that journey with Jesus, from the angel appearing to the cross, to the resurrection, to the ascension. I think that's something we don't spend a lot of time thinking about is, Mary has Jesus, he's crucified and dies. That we understand how that broke her heart, or have an idea. But then she goes through this incredible experience where her son is raised back to life, and then 40 days later, he's gone.
Yeah, and then gone again.
He's gone.
Well, and just showing up in the temple and having that word of prophecy spoken over her, this is going to be like a sword through your heart, and not understanding then what that meant. But I wonder if those words came back to her later.
Yeah.
Well, the name Mary means bitter.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That when you break it down to the kind of the real story, when you really think about what's happening, and then, I mean, everyone knows, even as a kid, it's like, well, it was, Mary was a virgin, and so Joseph can't be the father. But when you actually say, as part of the narrative, as you're moving through the story, that Joseph wasn't Jesus' biological father, and I think that words have power. And when you think about all the people that are in that situation where they may be with someone that's not their biological father, or as that person, that's a tough That's a tough pill to swallow for many reasons.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that I'm going to get this wrong. In the Hebrew text, it just says a young woman will conceive, not a virgin will conceive.
Okay.
I think when they translated the Hebrew text into Greek in the Septuagint, that's when the change was made from young woman to virgin. So, yeah, I wonder about, as the gospel writers were writing, especially Matthew, needing to make all those touch points with prophecy. Matthew was obviously reading the Septuagint instead of the Hebrew text.
Septuagint.
The Septuagint is the Greek version of the Hebrew text.
The Greek version, right. Yeah. Okay. Well, it just struck me, and maybe for the first time this way, is when you're not someone's biological father, and I've learned this through experience, you feel like, until you know that you're not, and I mean, he knew right away. I mean, Joseph knew, of course, but nothing has changed. But also, when you find out that they're not, you don't think of them any differently. You don't feel any differently and then as time goes on, you think something's going to change. Like, oh, well, like reality will set in, and it'll just be like, well, that's just somebody else's. But it's just like the other kids that God puts in your path, right? But it's a super. I just felt like when Ken said that, it was a little bit of a trigger for me, and just going back to a memory of my own, and thinking like how hard that would have been especially in that culture. Besides, like this whole deal, and then it's like after all the stuff we're gonna go through, and this boy's not even mine. You know what I mean? I don't know. That was just a personal. I don't know. Maybe that was just me, but I felt like I resonated with Joseph in a different way, just thinking about it from that. And it was simply the word that Ken chose to use that made that trigger for me. And just thinking the extra weight that Joseph was carrying into.
Would Jesus have been any less God if Joseph had been his biological father?
I think it would have changed the story pretty significantly.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say. The story was changed pretty significantly from the Hebrew text to the Septuagint. So then, taking from the Septuagint and writing the Gospels is really important for Matthew to point out, hey, she was a virgin. She was a virgin. This could only be of God. Whereas maybe if the text had not been translated into Greek as virgin, maybe that would not have been such an important part of the story.
It would change Christianity on its head, though, because I think that one of the major components of Christianity is that Jesus is all God and all human. And if you give Jesus a human origin, two parents that are both human, then you get a created being like you and I, which would definitely change the theology up. You don't think so, Melanie?
I mean, what percentage of human DNA makes the half human, half God? I mean, we're talking about a pretty big mystery here, but I mean, would it be beyond God?
This is a little bit of the Nicene Creed here, some of the basics of Christianity, right?
I mean, born of a virgin. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But
I mean, God can do anything he wants if that's how he had decided to do it. But it seems like if it was, it seems pretty normal then. Or, well, I don't know. God coming down. Well, it's not normal, but it's
what it seems like is, two people who didn't wait till the customs of their time said they were supposed to wait, have a child, and then want to say that child's pretty special.
Well, it's scandal either way. I mean, just from that standpoint, if you had the child out of wedlock, which everyone assumed was the case anyway, because sure, the Holy Spirit impregnated you. I mean, is that a story do you think they even shared? I mean, how do you explain this to the...
Well, they must have shared it. It winds up in Luke and Matthew and the Gospels, so he must have shared it with a few people.
But that like, oh, I'm pregnant, but it's not what you think. I mean, how do you even say that? How do you?
It would have been an interesting conversation.
I'm just saying, like normal people that even family members, like, oh no, it's not what you think. Oh really? What? Tell me what I think. I think you and Joseph, and it's like, no. An angel came to me.
Well, it would have made Jesus' family tree more interesting. He already had lots of interesting things in his family tree.
Yeah, I know we're down a deep rabbit hole there, but. That was.
You're welcome.
No.
That's why we have Melanie here.
No, to always think about, thinking about things that I had asked you what the Septuagint was. I've heard it before, but couldn't think of it. So, I would have no idea that was the case. So those are interesting things that always add more richness to the mystery. So I'm cool about that. And then the part of the story that thinking about Mary, speaking of this whole family and how did this happen, Mary having to go with Joseph as, it's always like, hey, little donkey, get him to Bethlehem. Yay. And now we get to sing the other we get to sing the other songs that happen after Jesus is born. But that it really could have been because she didn't have anywhere else to go because nobody believed the story that they had. I mean, is that accurate? Is that it's a possibility? That's something I've never thought about them having to, like her having to go, but why in the world would you want to be that pregnant on the back of a donkey?
In some of the commentaries I've read through, and this is one of the things that they conjecture, because it said that only the heads, according to Matthew, only the heads of household had to return to their familial hometown.
Okay.
And so the question is, why does Mary go along? I mean, you wouldn't think that if you're 9 months pregnant, you're going to make that kind of a trip unless there's some really overriding reason to make it. And so I think for me, it looks a lot like two people getting away from a scandal.
Well, and if they're going back to a familial hometown, they've got to have relatives there. Why didn't they stay with relatives?
Oh, good point. And yeah, there was no room there either, apparently.
Apparently not.
Or at least no room for your kind. Choices have consequences. You can hear it.
And again, all of this is conjecture, but it is not too hard to believe, even in today's world, that people will say, no, you are not living the way that we think you should be, so you cannot stay here. And so, yeah. I mean, I think there's a very real possibility in that story that's what part of what's going on. And again, I think sometimes in the joy of the angels and the wise men, we really miss probably some of the heartache and loneliness that these two people were probably experiencing. I imagine they were experiencing ostracism, that they were being condemned by their religious community. And it must have been a very, very lonely birth.
I mean, can you imagine that trip, though? Even just the trip, what are you going to talk about? I mean, if this is all going on, and sometimes when, even if your relationship's in a pretty good place, when you're dealing with that kind of outside pressure from both sides of the family, when you're, trying to defend your side of the family because you know them a little better. Like, well, I don't think they meant it quite that bad. Oh, I think they did.
Pretty
no,
sure.
Yeah, it's like, no. And it's just that was probably the quietest ride and walk from one place to the other in history.
And that's again, another thing is that we add the donkey into the story, that it's not there in the Gospels. There's no donkey ride. And if they couldn't afford a lamb, it seems pretty unlikely that they could afford a donkey. And so you're talking about a pretty significant walk. And, I know that when we were with both of our children, when you kind of get to that place where you're pretty close, Rochelle went past her due date on both of them. That one of the things they tell you to do is go walk. And so it's not surprising at all that she would have a baby. Can you just imagine? I mean, I freak out when the gas tank gets down to, just a few miles and I'm wondering where the gas station is at. So can you imagine what it's like to to maybe have Mary starting to have birthing pains and potentially looking for a place.
Yeah.
And like, are we going to make it to Bethlehem before, or if we get there, are we going to find a place? Or if we find a place, will we be able to find, somebody to help us with this birth? We take the mortality rate here in the United States for women and babies is pretty great. You don't hear a lot. There are occasionally people who will die in childbirth, but it's becoming more and more rare.
Although the mortality rate is rising.
Is it?
Especially among some demographics.
Okay. Well, that's not good news.
Not good news.
But at that time, at that place, the mortality rate was really high.
Yeah.
Like really high, that either the mother or the baby would die. We see that happen with in the story with Isaac and Rebecca, and she's giving birth to Benjamin and dies in childbirth. It was just not an uncommon thing at all for that to happen. So to go on that kind of a journey at that point, that pregnant, was taking a huge. I mean, you're already in a risky position. Now you're even in a bigger risky position. Do you know somebody who can help you with the birth? Somebody who's knowledgeable?
Yeah. So
about
Randy,
that?
the conversation on the way out there wasn't about the relatives. It was, why didn't you plan ahead? What do you mean you don't know where we're staying?
I'm hungry.
Are there going to be any midwives?
I pack snacks, right? Because I am really hungry.
Yeah. So,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I think again.
It's easy when you know they get there and the baby's delivered and everything's okay, right? But you forget. I think we missed that
I had
part.
a pastor friend of mine who used to do a sermon around Christmas time. They called "Where's the Dung?" And I think he used the word dung. But we have these creches and these barn scenes, and it's pristine clean. Mm-hmm. It's fresh straw, and it looks very nice and clean. And the barns I've ever been in, not clean. Even when they're not clean 3 minutes after you clean them up. There's donkey dung and whatever other animals around there, and it's not a clean scene. So again, if we're going to talk about other interesting things about the story, the story doesn't actually say that it was that Jesus was born in a stable. It says that there was no room in the guest house, and then it says that he was born in a manger, that he was placed in a manger. There are some historians and scholars who think that Jesus maybe was born inside of a house, but the houses sometimes would have levels, and one level would have the family on it, and then underneath the house there could be animals, and so or even sometimes inside of a one-level house they would bring their animals in to shelter at night, more body heat to keep the place warm, and so it wasn't uncommon necessarily for there to be a manger inside of a home. So there's.
Well, that makes me feel better that he might have been a fireplace close. I mean, not too close for the straw, mind you, but
there's a lot of conjecture that goes into exactly. We tend to believe a lot of truths about the birth story that are actually legend and myth, as opposed to factual. What the Bible says happened.
Yeah.
3 wise men. No, it just says that wise men came from the east. It doesn't say that there were 3. We say there are 3 because they brought 3. There are 3 gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So that's where you come up with that number. Again, the being born, there was no room, so that in the inn. Again, the word for inn is a hotly contested word of what it actually meant. It isn't as clear. It didn't say he was born at Motel 6. That's not what the word. The word is more vague. Maybe guest house would be a better. Guest house could be out behind my house. It could be a hotel potentially. So there's a lot of things that are contested or not contested, but things that we read into the story that we've added to the story, and we've taken to be, oh, well, that's just how there was a donkey that they rode on, No, not
But
necessarily.
But the nativity scene should be pretty blank if there wasn't a donkey and at least 3 guys.
It would.
So, I mean, there's that to think about.
Yeah, so we have to fill it out. So.
Oh, shucks.
There's a book called The First Christmas that kind of goes into all those details.
Oh.
It's
Can
kind of
you
interesting.
author? Or you can send it to me and I just want to put it in the
Yeah.
show notes because I'm curious. I would love to read it.
Okay. All right, sure.
Okay. So that will be in today's show notes. Check it out and see what more we might be not remembering or thinking about or things we've added. That's super interesting to me. All right, let's get to the questions. Matthew, who is one of our hosts this week, said, Jesus picked his parents, and if I'm being for real, and if I didn't know any better, I'd be annoyed by this statement. I love you, Matthew. But it begs the question, how is it fair that Jesus picked his parents? Who wouldn't want to pick their parents knowing that they won't be abused, be unloved, or feel abandoned? Although I'm not sure that we also know that Jesus never felt abused or unloved or abandoned. Maybe not abused, but
Abandoned when he went.
it feels like
Family
for
left
sure.
him.
But picking the parents, I mean, I guess that's true. I never really thought about it that way. That, hey, we're sending the angel to this girl and letting her know that, hey, you've been chosen. And maybe it was a compliance thing. They were like, she's going to say yes, and it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I totally understand that question. There's a lot of, unfortunately, having worked with young people for a long time, there's a lot of parents that I would never pick to be parents. Yeah. They're not good to their kids. And, Matthew's question is a good question. Jesus did not, he may have picked young parents, he may have picked parents that didn't have a lot of means, but it seems pretty apparent that Mary and Joseph cared about him. And there's unfortunately parents out there who don't seem to care about their kids and sometimes are very abusive to their children. So that is one of the parts of the story that you can look at and say, well, how is that fair? Is it fair or is it not fair? From my theological standpoint, Jesus was the second Adam, and Adam was in the Garden of Eden without a lot of difficult influences in his life. So from my standpoint, Jesus went through far more than Adam did and remained faithful.
There you go.
And so that's part of it. But part of this, I think we all have to just step into the mystery.
Yeah.
And also into the fact that we don't necessarily know the whole story. It seems like Mary and Joseph were good parents and that they worked hard for Jesus, but we don't really truly know Jesus' whole story. We don't know what happened to him as a child. And what I do have faith in is that God does things in ways that God doesn't expect more out of me than he expects out of himself.
Well, let's kind of stay in that frame of mind because that's pretty much where we're hanging out with the questions for the rest.
In fact,
of
I would argue that God doesn't expect as much of me as he expects of himself.
Okay. ALBJ said, never thought of this before. We've always read about Jesus' lineage from Adam through David all the way to himself. But since Joseph wasn't his biological father, doesn't it seem that lineage technically stops at Joseph? I mean, yes, but is that a yes and? Yes, but? Or? It
seems like here I may be speaking a little bit out of my lane, so I'll just put the little asterisk on it. But it seems like I recall that in Hebrew culture, if you're adopted, you count as part of the line. I'm not 100% certain on that, so I would. So
even if it's not blood, it's still technically considered.
If you're adopted,
okay,
you're part of the family.
Okay,
part of the family line. And Joseph does claim Jesus as his son. He does not say, I'm not his dad. He claims him as his son when he goes into the temple and dedicates him. Joseph is claiming Jesus as his son.
Okay, cool. Well, I kind of like that a lot. That's cool. Debbie said, it's interesting that Mary and Joseph were accepting public hardship and embarrassment, not honor, when they accepted God's invitation. It was only an honor in their view and God's at the time. How can we shift our perspective to be the kind of people that would love them? And putting judgment aside and assuming good intent, goodwill towards men. I think there's a song about that somewhere in this season, isn't there? I feel like, I don't know.
Yes, I think you might hear one this coming.
I'm not
weekend,
adding. I'm trying not to add anything to the story that's not technically there. But I also know that I spent too many years as a kid in Christmas programs to probably have a good grasp on it before 9:00 in the morning before coffee. So
there was no little drummer boy. I'm just going to put that out there.
No, don't take the drummer boy. Don't take.
And can you imagine?
Come on, that's.
Yeah. Well, did you think about having a drummer boy come into the delivery room when you were having children?
I was told no, Ken. I was told no.
Or come on into the nursery, drummer boy. Come on in. That's gonna
come. They told
there's
me.
There's nothing that a baby likes more than a drummer boy. Right?
If you want to get me in the Christmas spirit, a little King and Country little drummer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on, that's about
Can't
as good
argue
as
with that.
That's good stuff.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. We're not going to add to the story. And one of the things and this is totally, we're going to take a little shift. Tammy and Jeff checked in at church
from Italy, right?
At 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
Nice.
And got a really warm welcome. It was good to see everyone, seeing them and giving them warm hugs, virtual hugs as it were. But it was good to see them in the chat, even though they were half a world away enjoying really good food and coffee. Bring some back for me, please. Brian Scrooge, who wins Name of the Week for login name.
Brian Scrooge.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's good.
Brian and Aaron were kind of having a back and forth, and so I've taken all three of Brian's comments and put them together, and then hers as well, because it works. You'll get the gist of it. Brian said it would be weird if God chose a virgin to marry a previously, easy for me, married man with kids, some other place to have Jesus born. God works in mysterious ways, but it would be weird unless he widowed and some family took care of them. I mean, wasn't it still considered adultery back then if he remarried without widowing?
No. In fact, in Judaism, the man could just basically get a writ of divorce.
Okay.
There was no recourse for the woman. It was just, there you go. And there were certain rules around it, but it was, you could just basically for almost any reason.
But Joseph,
is that your recollection too, Melanie?
Yeah, I think maybe just saying Judaism in general is too broad, but in some specific contexts, yes.
Okay.
But Joseph being married before? This is a new one on me.
Well, that is the traditional viewpoint of the Christian church.
Okay.
Because as Christianity evolved in the Catholic Church, being that original, the virgin birth was important, and so they made Mary perpetually a virgin, and they said she never had sexual relations ever.
Right.
It was part of
that part I knew. Just
Christianity's obsession with that.
Growing up in an extremely Catholic community, yeah.
And so, and they took that off of the verse that said that Joseph did not have sexual relations with Mary until, let's see if I can find it. Matthew 1:25, but he did not have sexual relations with her until her son was born, and Joseph named him Jesus. The way that that's been translated in some places made people believe that Joseph never had sexual relations with her. And you could take that either which way. The way it is worded is pretty clear that it's until Jesus was born, he did not have sexual relations with her, which again, Matthew's going out of his way to try to point out that there was no way Joseph was the father.
Yeah.
And so the church has said, well, if that's the case, then how do we see Jesus having brothers and sisters? Because the Gospels mention that, and the book of James is written by Jesus' brother.
So that's assuming then that they never had sex.
Right. If they never had sex,
then they had to come
then,
before.
Then they must have come.
Okay.
Joseph must have been
Now I'm
married
with you.
before, and that's
Sorry.
why the church has said that Joseph was married before, maybe widowed, became a widower, and remarried.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we had to preserve that virginity. That was very important.
Very important. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that
That was a sardonic laugh that followed that statement, just in case anybody was wondering.
No, it wasn't. It was very important to Melanie too. So.
Oh man.
So yes, that's why that
Gotcha.
is around, and yeah, that is the official position, I believe, of the Catholic Church, and I think Seventh-day Adventists have kind of, to a certain extent. I don't know if we have an official position on it, but I think there's been. I'm trying to remember what Ellen White wrote about that.
It's kind of like, you retire a jersey. They retired the womb.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. Good. And then to wrap it up, we had the teaser question from Poppy Yankee that we teased at the end of second. Said, did Jesus really learn how to do carpentry? I mean, he's Jesus. He probably just pretended to learn, no? Poppy Yankee, whoever you are, that made me laugh. And that made me... It's all, we've all thought of these before, like, what kind of shortcuts did he get to take because he was God? So how did that work? Carpentry.
It didn't seem like Jesus was a shortcut kind of guy.
No, it doesn't.
He doesn't seem to take some obvious shortcuts in the gospel that would have been pretty easy for him. Although he does walk on water.
Right. That's a shortcut for sure.
So
that's the other part that's always the mystery of this story is we have there's the birth story, there's all that, but we don't really have a lot between then. It's like, hey, Jesus showed up and said, follow me,
yeah,
later.
A lot of missing years there.
Yeah. Is there any possibility that something I was just thinking about this morning was, the Dead Sea Scrolls and different things. I mean, do you think there's anyone that actually may have written anything down about Jesus' life? I mean, that he didn't tell his disciples? Probably highly unlikely, right?
So there is a gospel that
there you go.
supposedly
I knew if I asked the question.
the infancy narratives in it, but it's what is the word I'm looking for? It's not credible. I'll put it that way.
In fact, it was so not credible that when the Catholic Church was deciding what books would be a part of the official canon, it wasn't included there purposely because they didn't find it credible.
It's also very weird. You've got Jesus killing things and then raising them back to life as a child and doing all kinds of stuff like that.
Wow.
This is the Gospel of Thomas, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, the Gospel of Thomas. Man, that's now
And
that brings a whole level of what you can do as a kid.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that snake
It
you
was-
forget in your pocket.
That's right.
No problem.
No problem.
Definitely somebody. This one doesn't even land in the
Possibility or
right.
It's not taken seriously
Yeah.
by any,
But it was written at that time.
It was written later.
Yeah, but they can date it like it was written sometimes. Like someone wanted to come up with this
Was
for
it like the
whatever.
3rd or 4th century that they think
That's
of?
wild.
I'm not sure exactly what the dating is, but that seems like a possibility.
About right.
Here, I'll ask the
Ask
sources.
the all-knowing
Yeah, the
Google.
all-knowing. Yeah.
Oh, there he goes. Well, as Ken checks on that for us real quick, I just wanted to say, Ken just ended the message with, parents, it's never easy for those young parents. We had a child dedicated this week, and you start hearing the stories about losing your child. Yeah, you probably will. We lost. I was just thinking, we lost Ellie at the mall. At the food court, and some lady in a power wheelchair, rolled up and was like, "Does this one belong to you?" I mean, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and it's okay. You'll get through it, and the God's on our side for helping our parents. And then I just Melanie, thank you. Just sent me the link for the first Christmas. What the Gospels really teach about Jesus' birth. Marcus Borg and John Dominic Crossan. So I will have a link to that in the show notes. It's a link to Amazon if you'd like to pick up the book. I know I'm going to. And what did you find out? When was it written?
It generally is believed it was written in the mid-2nd century.
Okay.
the people who love it the most say maybe it was written in 60 AD, but that's
that also
most generally proposed it was written somewhere in the mid 2nd century. And I spoke out of turn because the gospel was not discovered until 1945 in Egypt. So when the Catholic Church was working on the canon, they did not have that at their disposal to consider.
Wow. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, they keep finding new stuff as they unearth new places, and unfortunately it was a bust.
This is Da Vinci Code.
This is a bust. What, Da
Level
Vinci
stuff.
Code's not real? I haven't seen the movie. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. I haven't seen the movie, and I may never, but don't ruin it just in case I do. Okay. Next week, Origins continues with
The Origin of Hope.
Origin of Hope.
Yeah, we are having our Christmas program, big Christmas program this coming week.
So, Hope. I see a birth on our horizon.
I hope everything's ready.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, that's really what the birth of hope is about. We hope it really goes well.
It's our birth of Hope.
It's going to
yes.
be great. It is
always is good.
Great music. Just
The choir's been working really hard. Wycliffe's been working really hard. The worship center already looks very different. So, this is going to be a lot of fun.
And I think that we are debuting officially our new sound system.
Wow.
They're working on it.
Our speakers would be probably the better way. It's not a complete, but we
are in the hope category, but I think it might be arriving sometime today or tomorrow.
I know who's working on it. There's no way. They'll be here 24/7. They'll still be here Saturday morning hooking up wires like Clark W. Griswold on the ladder if it's not done. It'll get there.
It'll be part of the celebration.
Part of the celebration.
Right.
No, for sure.
By the way, we actually tried these speakers out earlier this year and love them because what they the current speakers that we have will create really hot spots in certain places where it's really loud, and then it's kind of muffled and harder to hear in other places. It's kind of the sound is a little bit more mushy. And the speakers that we are bringing in that we've just purchased distribute the sound evenly. And I had so many church members when we were trying them out say, "Oh,
please don't send them back."
This is life-changing the way that because the sound is exactly the same on the front row. This is on the back row, back middle.
In the corner.
It's the same sound wherever you're at. And to me, that's kind of magic. I don't know how they can do that, but anyway, they do, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the picture of Abel hugging the system as it was leaving the lobby.
I think they had to drag him with it out.
So if you aren't following us, we're at Whole Life Orlando on Instagram or at Whole Life Productions. You can go and check that out. He did not want to see it go, and now it's back. So that maybe is a bit of a Christmas miracle all in itself, and we'll be thankful and be blessed by it this week for sure. So, hey, tune in next week. It is the big program. If you're close, now come on. I'm just going to let you, if you're close and you're like, I usually watch online, come for Christmas. There's room at the inn, at least at Whole Life.
We will make room at the inn.
We will make room, especially, even first service. I know we always say that because it's a little less, attended than second. But even at second, we'll get you in somehow.
No, for
somewhere.
sure. We'll figure it out.
Just come. It's going to be great. And the vibe, the Christmas vibe has been really, really. I mean, Gabby got everything rolling with the Christmas decorations and people.
I did have a complaint though from one of our online
what did we
viewers.
Miss? What happened?
Who told me not cool to thank Gabby for making the lobby really cool and then not showing us
the lobby.
Around the lobby to see what it looks like. We want to see what it looks like. So,
well, we're about to go.
We can figure that out.
I think we're about to head over to another meeting called Worship Debrief, and I think we can take care of that this morning, probably. Don't you think?
We'll figure it out.
We'll put this week's host on Rome and let you guys see everything that's going to happen. That'll be awesome. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Thanks for hanging out and listening, and have a great week.